and we're here with the Inspire Show. I'm really excited that we have an expert and influencer on lifestyle and travel with us today. So let me just, before we introduce Mel, I just want to tell you a little bit about the Inspire Show. It's all about meeting successful change leaders from around the world. Our guest today is actually local, and we meet every third Wednesday of the month at noon. It's kind of like a lunch break for people to kind of be inspired and listen to stories of people who are really following their passion and doing work that makes a difference in the world. By joining live like this, you get a chance to actually ask questions and interact with the speaker as well. This is part of the Awakening Village, which is a free membership program. And that includes really deep soul networking that we do through events as well as online. We have group coaching things ongoing as well. And we have a huge resource library that has videos and podcasts and articles and templates and all sorts of great things for you, all for free. So I encourage you to join the Awakening Village if you haven't already and take advantage of that. The community is really about this concept of seva, which is really selfless service. It's all about being in service without thought of repayment. And as much as we do that, we serve the others, we get back always multiple fold. All right, so just wanted, before we get started, just tell you about a couple of things coming up. There's also a free webinar next week on Wednesday from 7 to 8, and it's all about the things that stop us from living our passion and purpose. So check that out, that's free. And Sharon, who's on this call as well, and I are co-hosting with Zena, our cook, the Magical Soul Adventure Retreat, our third one in Costa Rica. We only have 6 spots left, so please check that out. And then coming up is one of those soul nurturing events that I talked about, Creative Camp, that's coming up in a few weeks. All right, so without further ado, I wanted to introduce Mel. Hi, Mel.
Hi.
So, this is a little you can see a little bit more of this information on our website and on her various social media platforms. But what I wanted to do is just show you, I had such a hard time picking my top 4 pictures for you from your Instagram feed. So while I introduce, get a sense of these beautiful pictures and get a real a range of the type of places that she goes to and visits and with different people. So Mel is really an impressive content creator, entrepreneur, and social media expert in the travel and lifestyle niche with over 215,000 followers. Yes, that's not hundreds, that's thousands. Unlike me, on her Instagram account, which is at M Vandersluis. Mel has created a lifestyle in her 20s that most of us can only dream of. She combines her passion for travel and adventure with her love of photography and design to inspire fellow travelers and adventurers. In the past 5 months alone, Mel has crisscrossed the globe to explore such destinations as the Turks and Caicos, Peru, Portugal, Paris, a lot of P's here, Puerto Vallarta, Germany, and most recently, within I think the last 10 hours, she just got back from Arizona, a trip there as well with her father. So Mel also educates her fans on how to edit and photos and really create filters, what she calls presets, on her YouTube channel. She sells these on Presets by Mel and is also the founder of her own jewelry brand, Melanie Audrey. She grew up in Montreal. She's in Montreal today and has a strong arts and design expertise with a Bachelor of Arts focused in psychology at Concordia. So welcome, Mel. Thanks so much for joining us.
Of course, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So thanks so much for joining us. I was wondering if you could just start by telling people a little bit about what is a social media influencer and a content creator, because not all of us are really that familiar with that term or those terms.
For sure. So I personally don't love the word influencer. I feel like, anyone who even has 1,000 followers could be an influencer. But in terms of a content creator, my job is to work with lifestyle brands, fashion brands, hotels, and creating the most beautiful content possible so that their brand is well represented. So for example, I can contact like a fashion brand and I'll say, hey, I'm going to Africa and I would love to take, some of your pieces with me and create some beautiful content while I'm traveling Africa. Wow. If that gives you a little bit of sense of what I do. And then on the hotel side, I'll contact hotels. So if I'm planning a trip to Africa, I'll contact all kinds of different hotels in Africa and say, hey, I'd love to stay there. And in exchange, I would love to create some beautiful content for you and basically promote your property on my social channel.
Wow. Is everyone going, wow? Like, really? You get to travel to the most exotic places in the world and get paid for it. That sounds really, really amazing.
It's quite the lifestyle.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I know there's ups and downs, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I just really want to especially thank you because you had some difficulty getting home. I follow you on Instagram, and she on her Instagram story, she had a few clippets of her time during the day where she got stuck in, was it Charlotte, South Carolina?
Yeah, so Charlotte unfortunately had my flight canceled, and so we had to figure out how I was going to get home. And I had to kind of work around this call because I said, well, if you're going to have me stay in Charlotte overnight, I can't leave at 11. I need to leave later. But they were able to organize it for me and put me on a different airline. But unfortunately, my luggage got lost. So, but that's just stuff that happens with a job. So it's okay.
That's amazing. Well, thank you. I'm really glad you're on here. And I think all of us here, as well as people who will be watching this later, are really happy that you're with us today. So one of the things I wanted to ask you a little bit about is kind of how you got into doing this work. You've told me a little bit about the story, but it's really fascinating how you got into this work.
Yeah. So about 3 years ago now, I was contacted by my cousin Tracy, who had started a content creation company. And like I had explained before, she had gone out and contacted companies saying, hey, I'm going to Bali and I would love to take your companies with me. So she had reached out to me and my best friend Lisa at the time. And she said, hey, would you guys be willing to come with me to Bali to help me shoot all this content? And we looked at each other, we're like, heck yeah, it's Bali, let's go. So we went to Bali and I think we shot for maybe 6 or 8 brands. And it was really my first taste of, using photography to create this like beautiful artistic content. And, Lisa and I came home and we were just so blown away. We were like, wow, we can make this a business. This is really cool. And so we had basically done our own outreach after that and saying, to brands, hey, we would love to create content in Montreal. We would love to create content for our next trip. So that's kind of how we got started. And we were really working on an exchange basis. So there was no money involved at the time. They would just send us free product. And in exchange, we would post, these beautiful photos on Instagram. So that's kind of how I got started with that. We created some beautiful content in Bali, and I posted Bali content for maybe 3 months after that trip. And people thought, oh, hey, did you move to Bali? And I was like, nope, nope, I've been home for 2.5 months. But yeah, so that's kind of how I got started into this. And then it just kept growing from there, and then eventually grew into paid jobs. Companies would reach out and be like, hey, we see that you have a following of, 50,000 and, we would like to send you some product and, can we know what your fees are? I'm thinking my fees, like I can charge for this now. So it was such a moment because, you kind of transition from like that beginning stage into the, okay, now I'm doing this more full time. I should really look into how I can get paid for it. So yeah, that's where we are now. So for the most part, I'm taking on paid jobs between, the tourism board for a certain country or, brands that I continue to work with. And yeah.
That's amazing. And I imagine a lot of people are interested in kind of getting into the field. And if they see success like you're having, people want to do that. What would you say is kind of one of your key success factors in being able to grow to the point where you are right now and to make money doing that?
I think like most things, you have to make sure you have a passion for it. I'm sure as we'll talk later about struggles and whatnot, it does come with ups and downs like every job. So it's just important to always be able to come back to your why. And it's great because I'm in the middle of coming up from a downer. So, as most things, we go on a roller coaster, and a month and a half ago, I was on a real high and then started to come down. And it's hard because you kind of, question like, is this the right thing? Is this what I really want to be doing? So during those questions, it's always important to come back to why you did it. And one of the ways that I am able to do that is to go on a trip, like going on a trip to Arizona, and just taking out my camera and taking pictures. And then I all of a sudden realize, okay, this is what I love to do, and this is why I'm doing it. And I love inspiring people to travel and to use my, creative brain to make these beautiful pictures. So I would definitely say that coming back to your why is the most important. You always need to have a purpose, or else you get lost more than anything.
That's great. That's awesome. That was one of the questions I wanted to ask you exactly is what is your why? And you articulated it so clearly. And so many of us have a hard time being able to do that. And, in terms of your why and inspiring people, can you tell us a little bit about how that's fulfilling for you?
I think like in terms of like, for me, what's fulfilling is being able to be creative. So creating out of nothing is such a beautiful thing for me. And while I'm sharing my passion with my followers, I feel like it gives them space and permission to kind of explore that as well. And I do my best to share all parts of it, the good, the bad. The job is very much a highlight reel, where you kind of see these beautiful pictures. And, like when people go on Instagram, they're kind of like, oh yeah, she's in Greece, and oh, she's in this place, and oh, what a beautiful life. But there are definitely ups and downs to that too. And sorry, I totally lost my train of thought there.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe I can ask you about that, the ups and downs, so that people understand, because I think that's really interesting, the highlight reel. And when we spoke once before with Sharon, you really impressed me by saying, what you're using Instagram is very much as a business tool. And so you don't put everything on there. You really pick and choose about that. So maybe you can talk just a little bit about the ups and downs of your business and what it's like and some of the challenges you've had.
Yeah. So, first, I think, Instagram is very much a portfolio for me. So I share my best work that goes on my feed. Instagram stories, which is more of like a casual thing for me, is more the behind the scenes. So what happens, in creating that photo, or what happens when I'm working on my other businesses. So using that part of Instagram to show people a little bit more about my work. Mm-hmm. So that's really important to me. In terms of struggles, I think it's very hard to look at someone else's highlight reel and be like, you know what, I've been working my ass off and I should be there. Like, I should be doing this and I should be at like her level. One of the biggest downfalls I've had is comparing, my work or myself to someone else. And I think that's such a common thing. And I've heard it from so many people. And we're only human. Like, we're bound to kind of look at someone else and be like, I wish I had their life, or I wish I had this, or I wish I had that. And it's been like a real conscious effort and practice to constantly say, no, like, I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm on the path that I want to be. And I just got to focus on what I'm doing and, embrace the path that I'm on, instead of kind of discounting that and looking at someone else to be like, they have it better, that's where I should be going. And I think in this business where, it's constantly about putting out your highlight reel, you get so, to a certain extent, disoriented and discombobulated, because you're like, oh, I have to do this. Oh no, I have to do that. And you're just seeing so many things and you're so overstimulated. And that's why I've really gotten into meditation, because it kind of like brings me back to, okay, get grounded and start listening to your thoughts and not everybody else. So those are like a couple of the struggles that I go through, and I go through often. It's just about kind of going through the motions sometimes.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. It's really, really insightful, because, many of us will look at your life and go, how could she ever want for anything more? But it is human nature. And I imagine being in the spotlight all the time, like, a celebrity, you have followers, people are always watching you. So there's that kind of added pressure of what you're posting next, and so you're always thinking about it. Do you ever feel that sense of you're never turned off, that in your life that you're always on your whole time?
Yeah, I am always on. And it's a question that I do get often is like, how do you take a break? How do you turn it off? I'm on my phone all the time. All my businesses are online, so I'm constantly on my phone.
Yeah.
I recently just took a break off of Instagram because I just could not get it together. I could not turn it off. It was just constantly, there were just constant thoughts all the time and I couldn't stop them. And so I'd made a decision and I told my followers, I was like, hey, I'm going to Tampa. And when I'm there, I'm turning off. I'm putting Instagram on my last page of my apps and I will not be going on here for the next 5 days. And everyone was like, wow, like that's awesome. I'm so glad you shared that. That's something that I've been wanting to do because I feel like I just can't turn it off either. So when I go through those really vulnerable moments and I end up sharing them, it sits so well with everyone that's there because you're never alone. And there's always someone who feels the same. There's always someone that's going through a similar thing. And so that's why I try and share those like vulnerable moments with people. But in terms of turning off, it's really just a mindset thing. And I've been trying to educate myself more on productivity. Making sure my days are really productive and scheduling out, as much as I can in my day and not trying to micro like manage my day, but just to create certain blocks and like theme my days properly, so that like I can really manage like all the tasks I have to do. And that way I'm like, okay, I can't be on my phone right now. That has to go away. And so then I have that chunk of time while I'm doing other things to really be off. So I think scheduling is definitely a big thing and something that I'm working on now. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too because you're primarily on Instagram. While you have a Facebook account and a YouTube account, and your followers on YouTube with your 3 videos, or shame my followers with I don't know 100 videos that I have on. But all to say, you're very focused on Instagram, and you have the desire to create a website and go beyond that as well. So being productive, I imagine, is a great challenge. What about do you have a team that works with you that helps you out?
Well, my beautiful mother is on here, and she's, as I see her laughing, she is helping me with my jewelry business. So big shout out to you, Mom. Thank you. One of the problems that I had with Melanie Audrey, my jewelry business, was that it needed my hands to actually make all the jewelry. And I was running into problems because I was constantly having to leave on trips. And, at one point Mom was like, you need someone to be here and do the production. And we ended up finding Sharon's son's best friend who was more than happy to come and like make everything. And that was such a big blessing. So that was a huge thing off of my shoulders. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely important to be investing in people to help you. Having that taken off of my plate really opened the doors to me being able to take on other more important things. And Mom was always on my butt about it. And she was like, where's the newsletter? Where's the product? Where's the new arrivals? Like, where's all the stuff? And I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't know. I can't keep track of, I can't do it all. The truth is like, it comes down to, your scheduling and your productivity, because I did have the time. My time was just very ill spent on, trying to sort everything out. So yeah, I do have a couple of people helping me. I have my best friend, Lisa, who is my photographer. We're a photographer for each other. So there's no having to hire anyone. It's just an exchange of services, which is awesome. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
So you might be needing a team as you're growing, right?
I hope so. I'd love that.
Yeah, sounds like it. Sounds like you got another job, Storm. It's coming up here as it's growing. Tell me a little bit about some of the common myths or misconceptions about your type of work, because it is pretty new for most of us, even online here, and who'll be listening later.
This is probably one of my favorite topics. So one of the common misconceptions is that my job is super easy, that my job is always a good time, that I'm living this luxurious life and that I make a ton of money. all of those are true to a small extent. But my favorite is that my job is super easy and that I have it really good. The thing is that my job is really hard. Being an entrepreneur, as most of you know, is always going to be hard. You need to make your own schedule. You have to be disciplined. You know, sometimes you need to work yourself to the bone to get something done. And I'm constantly working, and I'm happy to do so because, you know, I love my job. But I think a lot of people are like, oh, you get to go to all these like luxurious places and like, oh, it's so nice. And like, can you bring me along next time? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm also waking up at the crack of dawn to get up for sunset and take, you know, hundreds and hundreds of pictures a day, and, you know, editing pictures at night and going to sleep at 1 or 2 a.m. So that's where like the misconception comes in. And then when people start to understand, they're like, wow, you work really hard. And I'm like, yeah, like everyone else who is an entrepreneur works so hard. So that's one of the common misconceptions about my job.
Can I just add something to that? That's something that a lot of people starting out as an entrepreneur don't quite recognize, is that the commitment that's required, the amount of work, the dedication. You know, and my feeling is that if you're going to do that in a job anyways, whether it's a 9-to-5 job in an office or as an entrepreneur or as a lifestyle content creator, you might as well do it in something you love, because we're all going to have to spend that. To be successful, we need to kind of focus and you know, do some of the hard sides of things as well.
Exactly. And I think there's so many people who are like, I want to do exactly what you're doing. And I said, you can definitely make it happen, but is it something that you really want to do? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are like, yeah, I want to, you know, travel all these places. And I'm like, well, there's a lot more to that than what you see. You know, there's more to just like that one picture I post a day. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I always recommend to people, if this is something you think you want to be doing, then try it. Mm-hmm. No harm, you know, take your camera, go outside, take some pictures, see if that's something you like. And sometimes people come back and they're like, no, that's not what I want to do. And I'm like, well, good, because you tried it, instead of, you know, kind of going full force into it and forcing yourself to love it because you like the vision and lifestyle of what it could be, but maybe it's something you're not passionate about. And so that's why I think like that why is so important, because you can always come back and be like, no, that's not really my purpose. My purpose is something else.
Yeah, and I think that you know, one of what I would see as one of your keys to success is your photography and your design and your visual design, that you can see and create these beautiful almost works of art. I showed you just a few of them, and I really recommend you go to her Instagram feed and follow them, because anytime that Mel posts, it's like, wow, it's, you know, with your drone, you're flying over Portugal and these pictures that I've never even seen in, you know, Life magazine back when we were kids, you know. It's really amazing. So somebody who wants to start and who doesn't have that design, those real unique strengths. So Zena, thank you for asking. Anyone who has any questions, I'll give you guys some time to jump in, but if in the meantime you think of anything, just put it in the chat here. So she asked if you'd taken any photography courses, and in particular, do you use your iPhone? And would you consider creating a photography workshop? Or we'll say an Instagram workshop as well.
I love all the above. I can pull up the chat. Okay, perfect. So first, I didn't take a photography course. I'm completely self-taught. The great thing.
That. Can I just, interrupt with that? Just remember that, everybody who always says, I need to have all these certifications to do anything in life. I love that. That's excellent, Mel. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, you're good. I am a huge believer in YouTube, because YouTube is free. And there are so many people on YouTube who make it their business to offer you free content and offer you free courses. The other one I use is, I use it now. I just started maybe not even a month ago. And I use it because I started promoting this company. It's called Skillshare. And Skillshare is just like a library full of all kinds of different entrepreneurs who are teaching about their craft. So it's anything from like cooking, like making macarons. I was like, oh, I can take a macaron course. And it's not that expensive. I think you pay like a small fee monthly. And those teachers get paid by click or how many minutes it's viewed, which is super cool. But yeah, so in terms of photography, I'm completely self-taught. I started out with an iPhone. I strongly suggest if you want to get into photography, just start with an iPhone. It delivers amazing photos, especially like the newest models. It's incredible. I did my whole Bali trip with my iPhone, the first one I did. And I still look back at those pictures and I'm like, wow, like that's amazing. I can't believe I did that with an iPhone. And that's always a good place to start. I get a lot of questions about what kind of camera should I use and like how much should I invest? And honestly, I'm like, well, if you just have an iPhone, then start there. And if you love it, then you can invest in, like a Canon Rebel or like a Nikon, like 5500, which is, $400 to $500. And then if you still love it after that, you can keep working your way up the ladder. I find a lot of people kind of invest in like the expensive stuff at the beginning. Even my camera that cost maybe like $4,000, there are so many things on that camera that I don't understand. And I can go back to YouTube and be like, explain this to me. And that often happens. But for a beginner to go like into a very expensive camera at the beginning, it's not super important. Would I consider creating a photography workshop? I'd love to. I think that'd be such a blast.
That would be awesome for us entrepreneurs here, and also for Instagram. We've talked about that as well. Do a half-day Instagram workshop would be really helpful. Tell us a little bit about how you think Instagram maybe can help any of us with our business. Many of us are on Facebook a lot. A little bit we're dabbling with Instagram, and obviously you've made it a real huge success for many businesses. So just maybe if you can just kind of explain to us how that could be successful for us as well as entrepreneurs.
So first and foremost, Instagram is free. So I love free anything really. Any way to promote your business is great, but Instagram in the last 2 years has grown into 1 billion users, which is insane. Like it's had amazing growth over the last 2 years. So it's really become one of the top platforms to use to promote your business. One of the great things, or actually I'll start with one of the difficulties, is that the more or the longer that Instagram exists, the more that you get like more users and more saturation. So it's hard now because how do you separate yourself from the crowd? And that's really the biggest question. And that's one of the questions that I've been thinking on for the last couple of weeks is like, my market is so saturated. Everyone wants to be, a travel content creator, lifestyle creator. How am I going to do things differently? How am I going to inspire people just that much further in my art? So that's one of the things that you have to think on is, how am I going to set myself apart? And that could be through video, it could be through photo, it could be through, GIFs, like moving images. But overall, Instagram is such a beautiful platform to connect people. And a friend of mine, Kat Gaskin, she owns the Content Planner. And it's a great tool even for, any entrepreneur who is, creating blog content, Instagram, Pinterest, anything. It's kind of like your content calendar, and you can plan months ahead. So I just lost my train of thought again.
Well, what's the name of the Content Planner there?
The Content Planner is the business.
Okay. It's called The Business?
No. Her business is called the Content Planner.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to look that up and I'll share that link with people here.
Okay, I just remembered. So
okay.
She started this business, and her focus was basically to make sales. So she really tailored every piece of content that she put out to create this community and lifestyle around the Content Planner. So for her, it was like, I don't care what my numbers are. I just want to make sure that I'm providing the best quality product for my community. And I think she has 11,000 followers on her account, and she's made, I think, $150,000. She's like halfway through her like sell through. Wow. And she only started promoting it last week.
What?
So, yeah, it's crazy. And so her whole thing is like, if you can plan it and you can continue to promote it in ways that you're specifically talking to your audience, then people are gonna, she kind of like did this hype, you know, over like the last, I'd say 3 weeks. She was like, okay, guys, 3 weeks. Here's some behind the scenes of, you know, how I'm creating this. Here's where I'm at. She, you know, she even shared, she was scrolling through her phone of all the sales that had come in, and people were like, oh my God, this is so exciting for you. And so it kind of gives you a behind the scenes of the brand, because brands that don't show faces are way less likely to succeed on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
People want interaction. They want the story. They want the struggles. They want the vulnerable moments. They want the wins. They want to know, they want to follow you. They want to see like that documentation of your project. So for her, she's had incredible success with it. And it's amazing how she's done it. But it's entirely possible for anyone to do that. And to create content for any business is a lot easier than you might think, and you can still use an iPhone.
Wow, that's excellent. Well, that comes into, well, I'm going to just skip for a second, Tracy, but just because it segues into Kate's question, which is how do you take advantage of Instagram if you don't really have a photo-based business? So she's more of a consultant.
Okay.
So,
okay. So two things. Either I would partner with a photographer. So one of the, an entrepreneur that I follow is called Jenna Kutcher. She kind of, I wouldn't say brags, but she brags in a good way about working with a photographer, I think once a month, and creates like 30 photos from that. And she just continues to recycle those photos. And what ends up being the pièce de résistance is the caption. So she puts like all of this great information into the caption where people are like, oh yeah, like this is so great. And I'm so glad you shared that. But she was like, I don't need to be out taking photos every 5 seconds. You know, I'm happy to work with a photographer once every 30 days and be like, okay, I need, 15, 20 photos that I need to post on Instagram. And the other option is to just create graphics that are like quotes or, any kind of graphic. And you can probably outsource all of these things. It's just really important to get a good sense of what your brand is and what you stand for, what are your core values, and make sure that all of your content is about those. It's not about anything else. And you're very clear and concise about what your message is.
And again, I just kind of reiterate what I was saying, the kind of key message for me when I did a little workshop with you was that you're using Instagram for your business. So any of your messages are your highlight reel that are being posted, as opposed to the stories, which is the behind the scenes, as you're saying, and that they really are somehow relate to your business, even if it is a personal thing. That it really comes back to you're not all over the map. We can maybe use Facebook a little bit more for just the personal side of things, but use Instagram for your brand.
Yeah, totally. Oh, hang on 1 second. The dog came back. Hi.
That's awesome. So I want to go back to Tracy's question. She says, as a female general contractor, it's imperative that I step it up to outsmart the men around me. LOL, she says. How do you decide how to zero in on a particular subject and find that perfect shot? Yes, for the Instagram workshop, please. She said she wants.
Okay, so the question is how to outsmart the men around you, or
how to zero in on a particular subject and find the perfect shot. How do you focus that way?
I think it also comes back to, first of all, what is your niche? So what sets you apart from the crowd? And then creating, this is Sam. And yeah, just trying to find, maybe it's working with, with a photographer or a creative like myself to be like, how do I design a message that is going to really speak to this audience? Because sometimes it's like, well, maybe it's not about a photo. Maybe it's about creating more of a video. So maybe it's you just holding up, your phone and talking to your audience saying like, these are the 3 tips I have for you. In terms of the perfect shot, I would need like more of an example, I think, to to give you a good idea. Anyone have an example that I could use?
Do you want to mention something, Tracy? Or I can talk for you. She's writing. Let me just mention is that because she's a contractor, she does a lot of, here she goes, she just did a renovation for a kitchen.
Oh, perfect.
That could be
perfect.
For a month.
So one of the things that I love seeing on Instagram is before and after pictures, especially for renovation. Oh my God. It goes viral for people because they love seeing this like transformation. People love to dream, period. If you can zero in on speaking to people's dreams and visions, even better. So what you can do is Instagram has implemented in the last, I'd say 6 months, a carousel. So what it does is you can swipe through photos, and you can swipe through, I think the maximum is 10 photos. A blogger I followed just recently did this because she redid her bathroom. But she did like the prettiest picture as the first one. So like the newly renovated bathroom. And then the next one was like the second vision of like the shower and whatnot. And then the other ones were all the before pictures. And people were like, oh my God, this looks amazing. I love the way that this looks. And where did you get this and that? So people just love before and after photos. So that would be my example.
And one of the things that I learned from you too, Mel, is that you don't we think of it so instantly, Instagram, but you save your pictures. You often, pre-record your videos, then you put them all together and publish them. And I think, your plan and the promote tool that you've talked to us about as well might help us that way. But sometimes we feel we're in the middle of something. Oh, I'm going to post it right away. It's no, you've taken the pictures, then get the best of them and then put them together in a way that tells a story, right?
So I think the best way, so the number one thing that I always tell people is make sure that you have a good, you're using an editing software. So whether that's on your computer, so I use Lightroom, but if you're just using an iPhone, you can use something called ViscoCam, which has all kinds of photo filters that you can use, and you can find one that kind of speaks to your brand. So you want to make sure that whatever filter you're using is kind of coincides with like the colors or the mood or vibe of your brand. What's great about this is when you edit very consistently, and you post those to your feed, it all looks very consistent and it's very appealing to the eye, which is the whole thing about Instagram.
Very good.
Yes.
And just kind of further to Tracy's, was Kate's question about, trying to use Instagram for a type of business that isn't necessarily photo oriented. Brenda asked the same question. Would you use, if you're like a coach or consultant like myself or like Brenda or like Kate, do you think Instagram's a good platform for us, even though we're not lifestyle photographers or like Zena cooking, that type of thing?
So Zena, for you cooking, oh girl, I got plans for you. So in terms of coaching, I started following this man called, I can't remember what his first name is. His handle is the Better Man Project. And he started alongside me 3 years ago, and he's got 200, 300, 400,000 followers. Basically what he does is he posts his quotes or pieces of writing that he's done. And he puts those through Canva, which is another desktop thing that you can use. And that's really all he posts. Sometimes he'll do like a travel photo here and there when he's traveling, but otherwise it's just pure words. And he has some of the highest engagement I've ever seen because he's really speaking. So he's a life coach. So he's really speaking to the challenges that he's going through personally, or that one of his clients is encountering. And so that kind of sparks a conversation for people following him to be like, oh, I also feel that. And, oh, like, I'd love to work with you because I feel like I get you. And I feel like we would, vibe well together. So I think that's where you can kind of transform it into something that's not totally photo oriented. It does come in a photo visual, but it's not about like that beautiful travel photo. It's more about like the most important thing is, what you're looking at in that square.
Mm. That's great. And I've, listening to you before about this, what I started to kind of recognize about my brand is, as a coach, it really connects to nature. So most of my photos have some element of nature in the photo as well. So you'll see that consistently all the time. You may not notice it, but then, it's always there. So it comes always back to the basics of business, no matter what you're doing. It's knowing your brand, knowing your niche, and creating that dream for people or solving a problem. It's awesome. There's a couple more questions I have here. Julie asked about, do you have any concerns, or are there concerns, or how do you help concerns about privacy, that type of thing, or precautions of any kind?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, don't share your personal information ever. When you're doing videos or anything, I've done this before where I've videoed outside of Lisa's house, and like her address has been like there on the side, and I'm like, okay, can't post that. So I think just being aware of like where you're doing certain things. For me, one of the concerns is when I travel and I'm posting about a hotel that I'm staying at, are people going to come and just like say hello? I've heard plenty of stories where, this blogger has been at a hotel and she was like, hey guys, like, I'm doing promotion for the hotel. And then all of a sudden, like, someone's at her hotel room door being like, hey, can we hang out? And she's like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So just being aware of those kinds of things. I don't have a huge concern for that. But whenever there's like any like creepy stuff on Instagram, I usually just block them and call it a day.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Awesome. Linda also just wanted, if you could talk just a little bit about hashtags. How important are they? And do you think they'll continue to be an important part of Instagram?
Okay, so hashtags are definitely going to be more and more important because there's so much content. It's going to be really important to have very specific hashtags. So Instagram is trying to get away from the generalized hashtags. So stuff like hashtag beach, hashtag girl, hashtag whatever. You want to try and stick to hashtags that have maybe less than 1 million tags on it. So basically what happens is when you hashtag your content, it goes into a pool of everyone else who's hashtagged the same thing. So if you're using a hashtag that has like 36 million people tagging it, then chances are the second you post it, it's going to be way down the thing and people are going to have to scroll a long time to find your thing. The idea is to tag things that are like hyper relevant to you. So for me, I was in Arizona, but I was specifically in Page, Arizona, and I went to Upper Antelope Canyon. So instead of just tagging Antelope Canyon, I would tag Upper Antelope Canyon to get even more specific. So people who are looking to visit Antelope Canyon will be like, oh, okay, I know that there's lower and upper. I'm going to go look at upper. And so it'll kind of drive people to my content to be like, oh yeah, like this girl's super cool. I love her photos. I'm going to follow her. So hashtags are definitely always important. They give you even more engagement, I find anyways, than you might think. It just gives you more exposure to different audiences.
Yeah, I've noticed that myself, that when I don't put any hashtags versus when I do, I've done a little experiment. It's a major change. So we're almost finished or almost out of time. And I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions. Like you just alluded to a little bit of where you're going in the future. Maybe you can share what your thoughts are for your own career in the future, where you want to go.
It's so hard because this business changes almost like every couple of weeks. But for me, I just want to continue creating beautiful content. I want to get even more intentional with the brands that I'm working with. I would like to, work on projects that I'm really passionate about, and of course, brands that I'm passionate about as well, and just making a difference for them. Like I've really changed my focus from, okay, I have to, make money and like do this content, whatever, to how can I make a difference for these brands? How can I benefit a huge company like, I'm trying to think right now.
Designing transformation?
Yeah. But I mean, okay, perfect. So like, how can I provide you value? How can my services help you further your business?
Yeah.
Hi, Sammy.
I can see how like you could become an Instagram consultant, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's more to the job than just, of course, like making money and, creating your content. It's also like, okay, well, what relationships are you cultivating? Like, are you really making a difference, not just for your followers, but to the brands that you're working with? Ooh, this is a good question. Do you ever refuse a brand? Yes, all the time. Right now I'm saying more no's than yeses, and that's a really important thing.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Not,
Yeah,
you don't have to say names, but
no,
just
it's fine.
how you decide.
So the perfect example, and Lisa and I use this all the time, is when a tea brand contacts us, and it's like a skinny fit tea, and like if you drink this tea, then you're going to lose a ton of weight. That is not my brand. That is not what I'm trying to put out to the world. If a brand, let's say a beauty brand who doesn't have cruelty-free, like for that brand, I would usually say no. So these are things that I've, slowly adopted over time, where it's like, okay, like these products seem great and everyone seems to use them, but I'm not about like cruelty to animals for a product. So it's just about getting very clear again on what your core values are, who you are as a brand, and if that brand really fits in with you. So you don't want to be promoting things that don't make sense to your brand. And you don't want to be selling yourself short. You don't want to say like, oh, okay, well, like I'll take on this job because it's a paying job and I'll make it work. You really want to like hyper focus on companies or clients that are, really your cup of tea.
Pardon the pun, right?
Pardon the pun.
That's really, really good advice. And we all kind of sometimes, something may not be as clear cut as cruelty to animals, but you're not, you get the sense it's not the right client for you. And we take them on because, when's the next client going to come on? And to be really clear is so important as an entrepreneur, because you can end up spending so much time and energy on one client that's not right. And then it affects your time, it affects your brand. What about just generally, and when you're trying to decide, do you, well, I wouldn't say you tell your audience about who you're deciding and not, but do you relay that message to your audience that this is the type of people I follow, holistic, sustainable, that type of thing? Do you share that with your audience?
I think those messages come out more and more as I share with people. There's a huge conversation right now about sunscreen. So sunscreen's been around forever, but a lot of people don't know what goes into sunscreen. And I talked about this maybe a year ago, and I looked up the contents of sunscreen, and I looked up like the specific chemicals, because someone was like, oh, do you even know like what the chemicals are in them? And I was like, no. And I'm a huge Google freak. So I just went to Google and I was like, what is this? And then I read it and I was like, oh my God, I had no idea. And so as I'm looking these up, I was like, wow, like so many people in my community travel and all need sunscreen. And did people even know this? And so I put that out on social media, and like some people came back and they're like, I'm a doctor and like this is fine. And I'm like, okay, well, it's really not. And not only that, but it's not reef safe. So while we're like spraying on this sunscreen that has all kinds of chemicals and that's not good for us, we are also putting that into the ocean and killing the reef. Did you know that? So like a lot of people are like, get really defensive, but I'm like, my intention is not to have you react that way. My intention is just to inform you about the things that I'm learning and that we should always question. The other one is like plastic and using straws. I came in contact with an environmentalist and she was, really adamant about straws. And I was like, well, can you tell me more about it? And so, just like being open with people and hearing about it and then taking that information and then like sharing it with everybody else. I think that's such a huge thing and something I'd really like to get into more of.
Wow, that's excellent. Well, the last question, is there any other, anything else that I haven't asked or we haven't asked that you'd wanted to share? Is there anything coming up that you wanted to tell us about?
I don't think so.
Okay, that's great. And in order to get in touch with you, maybe you can just say where the best place, I would imagine, on your Instagram account.
Yeah, you can hop on my Instagram and send me a message, or my email's on there as well. So you can feel free to email me with any questions you guys have.
That's great. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic and such an honor and privilege for me to be able to connect with you and to connect you to our audience here. Thank you on behalf of all of us. Mel has offered to stay on for an extra 5-10 minutes if anyone has some questions they want us to speak directly to her. Well, we're going to stop the recording here, and thank you so much, Mel. Really appreciate it and look forward to your future travels.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun.
Oh, my pleasure.